Hello everyone and welcome to another Dark Ground video. In this video we will be talking about the infamous UK serial killer interviewed nine times by the police, the Yorkshire Ripper. So stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to another Dark Ground video. In this episode of the Dark Ground, we will be talking about the notorious UK serial killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, or dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper. So, Peter William Sutcliffe, also known as Peter William Coonan, was an English serial killer who was dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper by the press on 22nd of May 1981. He was found guilty of murdering 13 women and attempting to murder 7 others between 1975 and 1980. He was sentenced to 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment, which was converted to a whole life order in 2010. So that will give you a clue as to how infamous this guy actually was. So now we go onto the actual crimes itself. So, Sutcliffe's first documented assault was of a female prostitute whom he had met while searching for another woman who had tricked him out of money. He left his friend Trevor Birdsall's minivan and walked up St Paul's Road in Bradford until he was out of sight. When Sutcliffe returned, he was out of breath as if he had been running. He told Birdsall to drive off quickly. Sutcliffe said that he had followed a prostitute into a garage and hit her over the head with a stone in a sock. According to his statement, Sutcliffe said, "I got her out of the car, went across the road and hit her. The force of the impact tore the toe off the sock and whatever was in it came out. I went back to the car and got in it." Police visited Sutcliffe's home the next day as the woman he had attacked had noted Birdsall's vehicle registration plate. He admitted he had hit her but claimed it was with his hand. The police told him he was very lucky as the woman did not want anything more to do with the incident. She was a known prostitute and her husband was serving a jail term for assault. So that was his first known assault. Now we go on to 1975. Sutcliffe committed his second assault on the night of 5th of July 1975 in Kiley. He attacked Anna Rogluski, who was walking alone, striking her unconscious with a ball-peen hammer and slashing her stomach with a knife. Disturbed by a neighbour, he left without killing her. Rogluski survived after neurological surgery at Leeds General Infirmary, but was psychologically traumatised by the attack. She later said, "I've been afraid to go out much because I feel people are staring and pointing at me. The whole thing is making my life a misery. I sometimes wish I had died in the attack." On the night of the 15th of August, Sutcliffe attacked Olive Smelt in Halifax. Employing the same MO, he briefly engaged Smelt with a commonplace pleasantry about the weather before striking hammer blows to her skull from behind. He then disarranged her clothing and slashed her lower back with a knife. Again, he was interrupted and left his victim badly injured but alive. Like Rogulski, Smelt subsequently suffered severe emotional and mental trauma. She had told interviewing officer Deputy Superintendent Dick Holland, later to be the Ripper Squad's second in command, that her attacker had a Yorkshire accent, but this information was ignored, as was the fact that neither she nor Rogulskij was in town with a red light. towns with the red light area. On 27th of August, Sutcliffe attacked 14-year-old Tracy Brown in Silsden. He struck her from behind and hit her on the head 5 times while she was walking along a country lane. He ran off when he saw the lights of a passing car, leaving his victim requiring brain surgery. Sutcliffe was not convicted of the attack, but confessed to it in 1992. The first victim to be killed by Sutcliffe, so we're going into a murder now, was Wilma McCann on the 30th of October. McCann, from Scott Hall in Leeds, was a mother of 4 children aged between 7 and 2. Sutcliffe struck the back of her skull twice with a hammer, then inflicted a stab wound to the throat, 2 stab wounds below the right breast, 3 stab wounds below the right breast, and a series of 9 stab wounds across the umbilicus. An extensive inquiry involving 150 officers of the West Yorkshire Police and 11,000 interviews failed to find the culprit. In December 2007, Wilma's eldest daughter Sonia Newlands died by suicide, reportedly after suffering years of anguish and depression over the circumstances and consequences of her mother's death upon her and her siblings. Now we move on to this subsequent year of 1976. Sutcliffe committed his next murder in Leeds in January of 1976, when he stabbed 42-year-old Emily Jackson 56 times. In dire financial straits, Jackson had been persuaded by her husband to prostitute herself, utilising the van of their family roofing business. Sutcliffe picked up Jackson, who was soliciting outside the Gaiety pub on Roundhay Road, then drove about half a mile to derelict Enfield Terrace in the Manor Industrial Estate. Sutcliffe hit her on the head with a hammer, dragged her body into a rubbish-strewn yard, and then used a sharpened screwdriver to stab her in the neck, chest, and abdomen. He stamped on her thigh, leaving behind an impression of his boots. Sutcliffe attacked 22-year-old Marcella Claxton in Roundhay Park, Leeds, on the 9th of May. Walking home from a party, she accepted an offer of a lift from Sutcliffe. When she got out of the car to urinate, he had hit her from behind with a hammer. Claxton survived and testified against Sutcliffe at his trial. At the time of this attack, Claxton had been 4 months pregnant and subsequently miscarried her baby. She required extensive multiple brain operations and suffered from intermittent blackouts and chronic depression. 1977. On the 5th of February, Sutcliffe attacked Irene Richardson, a Chapeltown prostitute, in Roundhay Park. Richardson was bludgeoned to death with a hammer. Once she was dead, Sutcliffe mutilated her corpse with a knife. Tyre tracks left near the murder scene resulted in a long list of possible suspect vehicles. 2 months later, on the 23rd of April, Sutcliffe killed Patricia Atkinson, a prostitute from Bradford, in her flat, where police found a boot print on the bedclothes. Another 2 months later, on the 26th of June, he murdered 16-year-old Jane MacDonald in Chapeltown. She was not a prostitute, and in the public perception, her murder showed that all women were potential victims. The police described her as the first innocent victim. Sutcliffe seriously assaulted Maureen Long in Bradford in July. He was interrupted and fled, leaving her for dead. She was suffering from hypothermia when found and was in hospital for 9 weeks. A witness misidentified the make of his car, resulting in more than 300 police officers checking thousands of cars without success. On October the 1st of 1997, Sutcliffe murdered Jean Jordan, a prostitute from Manchester. In a confession, Sutcliffe said he had realised the new £5 note he had given her was traceable. After hosting a family party at his new home, he returned to the wasteland behind Manchester's Southern Cemetery, where he had left the body, to retrieve the note. Unable to find it, he mutilated Jordan's corpse and moved it. On 19th of October, Jordan's body was discovered by local dairy worker and future actor Bruce Jones, who, I will say, you will know him best as as Les Battersby in Coronation Street, and this discovery changed his life. He, he had an allotment on land adjoining the site where the body was found and was searching for house bricks when he made the discovery. The £5 note hidden in a secret compartment in Jordan's handbag was traced to branches of the Midland Bank in Shipley and Bingley. Police analysis of bank operations allowed them to narrow their field of inquiry to 8,000 employees who could have received it in their wage packet. Over 3 months, the police interviewed 5,000 men, including Sutcliffe. The police found that the alibi given for Sutcliffe's whereabouts was credible. He had indeed spent much of the evening killing at a family party. No pun intended. Weeks of intensive investigations pertaining to the origins of the £5 note led to nothing, leaving police officers frustrated that they collected an important clue but had been able to trace the actual firm or employee within the firm to which or who the note had been issued. On the 14th of December, Sutcliffe attacked Marilyn Moore, another prostitute from Leeds. She survived and provided police with a description of her attacker. Tyre tracks found at the scene matched those from an earlier attack. Her photo fit a strong resemblance to Sutcliffe, like other survivors, and she provided a good description of his car, which had been seen in red light districts. Sutcliffe had been interviewed on this issue. So now we go on to 78. The police discontinued the search for the person who received the £5 note in January 1978. Although Sutcliffe was interviewed about it, he was not investigated further. That month, Sutcliffe killed again. His victim was Yvonne Pearson, a 21-year-old prostitute from Bradford. He repeatedly bludgeoned her about the head with a ball-peen hammer, then jumped on her chest before stuffing horsehair into her mouth from a discarded sofa under which he had hid her body, near Lum Lane. 10 days later, he killed Helen Reitker, an 18-year-old prostitute from Huddersfield. He struck Reitker on the head 5 times as she exited his vehicle, before stripping most of the clothes from her body and repeatedly stabbing her in the chest. Her body was found 3 days later beneath railway arches in Gowran's timber yard to which he had driven. Sutcliffe said of Reitker while in police custody in 1981, "I had the urge to kill any woman. The urge inside me to kill girls was now practically uncontrollable." On May 16th, Sutcliffe killed Vera Millwood in an attack in the car park of Manchester Royal Infirmary. Now we go on to 1979. On the 4th of April 1979, Sutcliffe killed Josephine Walker, a 19-year-old building society clerk whom he attacked on Savile Park Moor in Halifax as she was walking home. Despite forensic evidence, police efforts were diverted for several months following receipt of the taped message purporting to be from the murderer, taunting Assistant Chief Constable George Oldfield of the West Police, who was leading the investigation. The tape contained a man's voice saying, "I'm Jack. I see you're having no luck catching me. I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you're no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started." Based on the recorded message, police began searching for a man with a Wearside accent, which linguists narrowed down to the Castletown area of Sunderland, Tyne and Wear. The hoaxer, dubbed Wearside Jack, sent 2 letters to police and the Daily Mirror in March 1978, boasting of his crimes. The letters, signed Jack the Ripper, claimed responsibility for the murder of 26-year-old Joan Harrison in Preston in November 1975. At the time, police mistakenly believed that the Preston murder was not public knowledge. The hoaxer case was reopened in 2005, and DNA taken from envelopes was entered into the national database, in which it matched that of John Samuel Humble, an unemployed alcoholic and long-time resident of the Ford estate in Sunderland, a few miles from Castletown, whose DNA had been taken following a drunk and disorderly offence in 2001. On the 20th of October 2005, Humble was charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice by sending the hoax letters and tape. Humble was remanded in custody on the 21st of March 2006, was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison, and he subsequently died on July the 30th, 2019 at the age of 63. Then, on the 1st of September, Sutcliffe murdered 22-year-old Barbara Leach, a Bradford University student. Her body was dumped at the rear of 13 Ashgrove under a pile of bricks close to the university and her lodging. It was his sixth attack. The murder of a woman who was not a prostitute again alarms the public and prompted an expensive publicity campaign, emphasizing the Wearside connection. Despite the false lead, Sutcliffe was interviewed on at least 2 other occasions in 1979. Despite matching several forensic clues and being on a list of 300 names in connection with the £5 note, he was not strongly suspected. Sutcliffe was actually interviewed by police 9 times in total. So, we go to the 80s and what would be 1880, which would be the last year of his reign of terror. In April of 1980, Sutcliffe was arrested for drunk driving. While awaiting trial, he killed 2 more women. Sutcliffe murdered 14-year-old Marguerite Wells on the night of the 20th of August 1980, and 20-year-old Jacqueline Hill, a student at Leeds University, on the night of 17th of November 1980. Hill's body was found on wasteland near the Arndale Centre. He also attacked 3 other women who survived. Padja Bandara in Leeds on the 24th of September 1980, Maureen Lee, an art student, attacked in the grounds of Leeds University on the 25th of October 1980, and 16-year-old Teresa Sykes attacked in Huddersfield on the night of the 5th of November 1980. Needing to feel safe, Sykes placed a wardrobe and dressing table against her bedroom door and slept with a knife hidden under her pillow. On the 25th of November 1980, Trevor Birdsall, an associate of Sutcliffe and the Gateway driver as Sutcliffe fled in his first documented assault in 1969, reported him to the police as a suspect, but the information vanished into the paperwork already accumulated. So now we get on to the rest of the killer. On the 2nd of January 1981, Sutcliffe was stopped by the police with 24-year-old prostitute Olivia Reevers in the driveway of Light Trade's house in Melbourne Avenue, Broomhill, Sheffield. A police check by probationary constable Robert Haynes revealed Sutcliffe's car had false number plates, and he was arrested and transferred to Dewsbury Police Station. At Dewsbury, he was questioned in relation to the Yorkshire case as he matched many of the known physical characteristics. The next day, police returned to the scene of the arrest on a whim and discovered a note, a knife, hammer and rope he had discarded when he briefly slipped away from the police after telling him he was bursting for a pee. Sutcliffe hid a second knife in the toilet cistern at the police station when he was permitted to use the toilet. The police obtained a search warrant for his home in Heaton and brought his wife in for questioning. So, Sutcliffe was charged on the 5th of January 1981. At his trial, he pleaded not guilty to 13 charges of murder, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The basis of his defence was that he claimed to be the tool of God's will. Sutcliffe said he had heard voices that ordered him to kill prostitutes while working as a gravedigger, which he claimed originated from the headstone of a Polish man, Bronislaw Zapolski, and that the voices were that of God. Sutcliffe pleaded guilty to 7 charges of attempted murder. The prosecution intended to accept Sutcliffe's plea as the 4 psychologists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, but the trial judge, Justice Sir Leslie Boreham, demanded an unusually detailed explanation of the prostitute reasoning. After a 2-hour representation by the Attorney General Sir Michael Havers, a 90-minute lunch break, and another 40 minutes of legal discussion, the judge rejected the diminished responsibility plea and the expert testimonies of the psychiatrist, insisting that the case should be dealt with by a jury. The trial proper was set to commence on the 5th of May of 1981. And that trial lasted 2 weeks, and despite the efforts of his counsel, James Chadwick QC, Sutcliffe was found guilty of murder on all counts and was sentenced to 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment. The jury rejected the evidence of 4 psychiatrists that Sutcliffe had paranoid schizophrenia, possibly influenced by the evidence of a prison officer who had heard him say to his wife that if he convinced people he was mad, then he might get 10 years in a loony bin. The trial judge said Sutcliffe was beyond redemption and hoped he would never leave prison. He recommended a minimum term of 30 years to be served before parole could be considered, meaning Sutcliffe would have been unlikely to be freed until at least 2011. On the 16th of July 2010, the High Court issued Sutcliffe with a whole life tariff, meaning he was never to be released. At his trial, Sutcliffe admitted 2 other attacks. It was decided that prosecution for these offences was not in the public interest. West Yorkshire Police made it clear that the victims wished to remain anonymous. So he was moved to Broadmoor Hospital, a very high security risk psychiatric hospital, known to have housed some of the most notorious people from UK history, in March of 1984. He had a couple of appeals rejected, and the murderous life of Peter Sutcliffe would come to an end on the 13th of November 2020 at the age of 74. So he died at University Hospital of North Durham, aged 74, after previously returning to HMP Franklin following treatment for a suspected heart attack at the same hospital 2 weeks prior. Sutcliffe had a number of underlying health problems. A private funeral ceremony was held and Sutcliffe's body was cremated. And that brings the curtain down on the casebook of the Yorkshire Ripper. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Middle Ground. And if you liked what you heard and what you saw, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video will be released. Until then, I've been Danny, and remember, what's under the bed is not the only thing that you have to be scared of. Don't have nightmares. Until next time.